Taoiseach, the inescapable reality is that you have no real appreciation of the huge crisis and distress in the lives of so many of our people as a result of unsustainable mortgages. A generation of young people who, over the 10-year criminal property bubble, were blackmailed into paying prices for the simple human right of a roof over their heads that has now, the level of which has now imprisoned them. And having doubled the crisis mortgages in your administration, as your previous administration did, putting forward that it has reduced somewhat to just about 80,000 as a major step forward, I'm afraid, does not in any way recognise that they are 80,000, oftentimes not just individuals but entire families, who are hugely distressed. And you have come up with no alternative of sustainable variety that would show a quick way out for those who are in distress. Now, in your reply just there, you were at pains with regard to the IBRC, the 13,000 IBRC mortgages, to look out for the interests of the creditors. In other words, the financiers who are involved here, whose interests you always put first. Now, what I want to ask you this, Taoiseach, are you in any way ashamed that your government is handing over 13,000 individuals and families to vulture funds from God knows where, and despite what you said, they do not and will not have guarantees in the situation that they are bought by outside interests based in the United States or whatsoever? Now, can I ask you this, Taoiseach? Isn't it the case that those homeowners can be subjected to, for example, increases in interest rates, that they can be put under intolerable pressure with regard to repossessions, etc., with threats, all kinds of debt-collecting agencies coming after them, if the vulture fund wants to change or to have a mass sell-off of this portfolio? And can I sum it up like this, Taoiseach? Isn't it quite shocking that, as far as your government, the Fine Gael and Labour are concerned, the very interests, the financial institutions, the bondholders and the hedge funds, who are up to their necks in creating the financial gambling casino that was the international financial markets in the 10 or 15 years up to 2008, that cabal that reaped obscene profits on the backs of vulnerable mortgage holders.
Deputy, we can't have speeches. This is question time.
And then crashed the economy as a result. You are now handing over the victims of that crash for further torture to the very people who caused the crash. Do you not see a massive irony, to say the least, in that? So therefore, can I ask you, Taoiseach, in conclusion, the following questions. Isn't it the case that some of the solutions that have been outlined, like split mortgages, for example, are simply a matter of maintaining in bondage homeowners into their old age and even passing on the debts to their children? And isn't it the case that what is needed is a bold policy in the interest of our people, not in the interest of the financial markets, that writes down generally the level of mortgage debt, the blackmail debt that people were forced to take, to today's prices, calibrate downwards the monthly mortgage, thereby give security to the people who are now in distress, and also release hundreds of millions of euro a year at least into the domestic economy that would otherwise be going into dead banks, as part of the process of rebooting that economy. Isn't that the real issue? And can I ask you if you've even discussed the IBRC mortgages on this Cabinet Committee, or will you discuss it urgently in order to change the policy that your government is implementing?
Sorry, just before the Taoiseach replies, these questions are purely statistical. They asked a number of times that committees have met. Now, the line minister is responsible for the policy. We can't go on at this rate. It's nearly 20 minutes on 3 statistical questions when other deputies have important questions down. So I'd ask people to recognise that, these sort of issues should be raised with the line ministers, not with Taoiseach's questions, under the heading of many times a committee met. So, I'd ask everybody to be conscious of that.
I actually remember when I was over there where Deputy Martin was, you get no answer at all from government, because these are about cabinet subcommittees and you're not required to make any answer at all, but because it's an important issue. I did say to deputies across the way they could have a series of priority questions if you wanted to pick particular issues that we could have an interaction on. Anyway, in respect of Deputy Higgins' comment, now we're talking here about the recovery of the economy, and the numbers in work are increasing. The numbers on the live register are decreasing for 20 consecutive months. That is helping a number of people to get out of their mortgage difficulties and provide the opportunity to make progress. I've given the figures to Deputy MacDonald. There is a modest recovery in house prices, so that's a lessening of negative equity. It doesn't apply all over the country by any means. It's a small development, but it's welcome. Deputy Higgins is well aware that at the height of the so-called Celtic Tiger, we were building 100,000 houses when we needed 30. Now we're building 6.5 when we need 25 or 30. And to get to a point where you can actually catapult that into action, you have to look at the places where planning permissions were issued that are not suitable, planning permissions that are under consideration, the requirement for good contractors to be able to have a stream of income to develop a site, to build the houses and have a stream of income coming in that meets that, and that means a lending opportunity from a lender or lenders as the case might be. Clearly, there's serious pressure on for detached housing and for family houses in the Greater Dublin area. This is an issue that will be the focus of housing discussion here and of a special cabinet meeting that I've called for next week. You mentioned specifically about the IBRC. I've said to you that there are legal requirements to have to maximise the returns in all of these cases. At the end of May, there were 17,411 residential loans in IBRC, and they were outstanding to 13,000 customers. Clearly, the position is that taxpayers have already incurred far too high a price from this bank, and no further cost should be imposed on them. It's important to note that the special liquidators have confirmed that all borrowers are permitted to pay their mortgage at par value, and there are no legislative barriers to that happening. If the bids received are not in excess of the valuation that's set out, then the portfolio will be sold to NAMA. As I pointed out to Deputy MacDonald, in 2 previous cases, in 2012 and 2013, and the full compliance not only of the contracts applicable to the mortgages, but also the extra codes of conduct requirement set up by the Central Bank were adhered to. And the latest group interested have said quite clearly that they wish to be regulated and voluntarily submit, if they're in a position to acquire them, to abide by the codes of conduct. And that's in the interest, I think, of everybody. The position about repossessions is very clear. I don't accept at all your scaremongering tactics that people are going to have investigators outside the back door saying you have to move because your house is in negative equity area and mortgage arrears here. As I say, if the bids are not received to value, then NAMA acquire these. Obviously, they comply completely with the codes of conduct. And repossession is the last resort. And as I said earlier on to a question, the vast majority of cases have been voluntarily submitted, Deputy Higgins, as distinct from a decision of the court. People themselves make up their minds when they identify in their particular circumstances what is the best thing for them to do. And as Minister Burton's often pointed out, the fact that a person is working in a household allows for a solution to be brought about here. And the banks have been set their targets to offer people sustainable solutions by the end of the year. We want to keep the pressure on here. And this will be the subject, I might say, of discussions at our forthcoming meeting.